Go.
Okay, we're here now in the Canyon of Heroes. Hi. It's known as the Canyon of Heroes, which I think is a wonderful term. Rather than just saying buildings around Broadway, canyon sort of evokes like a park or a natural setting, hills and valleys and canyons. And it is actually beautiful. It has a little bit of the urban dirty grit, but with the flowers in the park and the beautiful architecture, Canyon is an apt name. And then it's Canyon of the Heroes because this is the location of ticker tape parades, the famous parades where they drop all those pieces of paper onto people for some fantastic occasion. The first ticker tape parade was thrown supposedly in honor of the dedication of the Statue of Liberty. Some office worker in some upper floor decided, as the dignitaries were coming down the street, to throw a bunch of trash, basically, extra ticker tape out the window like confetti. And the tape fell down and everyone thought that was wonderful and a tradition was born. And so whenever visiting dignitaries came up the street in a parade or some important event was being celebrated, you would get thrown a ticker tape parade, and if you had one of these in your honor, you would truly had arrived. You can see all of these people and events that have been commemorated by these parades. On both sides of the street, there are plaques that you can walk right on over the top of that commemorate each different parade and each different person or people that have been commemorated. So when we walk up the street a little later, look at the sidewalk and read it, you can see everybody from kings and queens and dignitaries to airplane pilots and musicians. So the Canyon of Heroes is a canyon, it's for heroes, that makes sense. It's also the location of Bowling Green Park, which we just walked through. The oldest park in the city actually has an interesting story associated with it, like everything else. Bowling Green Park was established with permission from the king and was rented from the king as royal property for 1 peppercorn per year. Peppercorns kind of come up often in colonial commerce because they're a useful sort of unit of currency. These days we use dollars, but international currency wasn't well regulated, so peppercorns are a nice sort of symbolic currency. Anyways, the British people here were renting this park from the king on royal land, and they were able to put up a fence around it. And this is actually the original fence that you're standing right up against right now. And they put a fence around it to keep the park clean and to keep all the rubbish out. Down here, this was a part of town that was busy and bustling. It was the middle of everything, and it would have had a cattle market, and there would have been pigs rooting around in the street, and there would have been trash and waste and whatnot. There was no sewage, there was no garbage system. And so the fence kind of kept the trash out, and it kept the pigs out of the nice park as well. In any case, by the time you get to 1770, the colonists were so thankful to King George for helping them to win the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War, depending on where you were when it happened. They won that war against the French, and then the United States, well, what would be the United States? The British colonies now were able to also have access to land up in Appalachia. The colonists were so thankful for this, for a short while, that they put up a statue of King George on a horse, an equestrian statue, in the middle of this park. Beautiful bronze statue, yay, we love the king so much. But then unfortunately that war was really expensive. And so even though we got the benefit of all that land, King George and his advisors said you can't use that land and we're going to raise taxes because the war was really expensive. This, of course, upset the colonists, and you guys know what happens when you tax people without giving them a voice in how their taxes are levied. Taxation without representation. It's a big problem. Even today, people get upset about that. So, what happens as a result of that? Well, eventually, we have the Declaration of Independence. When was that? When did that occur? When was it signed? On July 2nd. 1776, but it was announced on July 4th, so that's the day we celebrate. On July 4th, way up Broadway at City Hall, the Declaration of Independence was read. A crowd of angry and excited patriots tromped down Broadway through the Canyon of Heroes. It wasn't much of a canyon back then, to this park. And they focused their attention on that statue, and they tore it down, and they broke it up into pieces, and the legend says they melted it down into bullets to fire at the British soldiers. Nice, symbolic. They cut off King George's head, stuck him on a pole, paraded him around town. We're not British anymore. Blah. And they actually start calling themselves Americans, which no one had really used before. Before that, the Americans were the Indians, and the white people were the British, or the Dutch, or the whatever, but now we're going to be Americans. So that happens here in this park, and also you can see behind you on the fence the other piece of vandalism that they did. They cut off the tops of the posts, these little finials that were on each of the posts all the way around the park, had some sort of symbol of the king that was offensive enough and regal enough that these patriots, these Americans, chopped them off, sawed them off, and you can go by when we're moving on, you can go by and actually touch them. It's still a rough surface even today, so it must have been taking quite an effort to chop those off. Last thing before we move on, behind me, amidst the crowd of people, as always, is the Charging Bull statue. Modern symbol of New York, probably one of the most famous statues in the city, famous works of art, maybe after Lady Liberty, the Charging Bull. Always surrounded by tourists, definitely the most popular attraction in this part of town. I recommend you come back later in the day, like sometime after 6 o'clock. There's usually many fewer people. You can get a much better photo op than you can this time of day. The Charging Bull statue has a really interesting story, which actually, much like everything else I've been telling you, sort of signifies the spirit of the city. It was a piece of guerrilla art, like guerrilla war, guerrilla art sort of sneaks up on you and gets you. Created by Arturo de Modica after a stock market crash in the 1980s. The country was in a recession, we were kind of feeling a little depressed about ourselves, and he felt like we needed a little pick-me-up. So he created this statue as sort of a Christmas gift to the stock exchange and to the American people. Hi. And so he created this statue completely illegally, and then Christmas Eve stuck it in front of the New York Stock Exchange. Not allowed, vandalism, beautiful vandalism, but still vandalism. And commentary. So immediately the police impound the statue, but it's so popular that public outcry says, you know, we need to have this statue back. So the compromise was reached. It couldn't stay in front of the stock exchange because it was blocking traffic and it was sort of disruptive. So they moved it here, where it's much easier for people to enjoy it, share in it, touch it, rub it for good luck. When you get up close to it, you can see what parts of it people like to rub for good luck. They're the shiniest parts. They're the parts that make it sort of a bull and not a cow. And it's still illegal. It's still not owned by anybody. Actually, it's for sale if anybody would like to buy it. The artist has it up for sale, but the only condition is if you buy it, you have to leave it here. So, still an illegal piece of artwork, and was actually adopted by the Occupy Wall Street protesters as sort of a symbol of their movement. And partially because of that, and because it could be sort of symbolic of things that could get people a little excited, it has the distinction of being the only piece of illegal artwork, as far as I know, in the country that has 24-hour-a-day police protection. And if you look around any time of day, there are always cops around here, which makes it probably one of the safest places to be in the entire city. It's a bull. For some reason, bull and bullish and being bullish about a stock means that the stock you think is going to go up. So that makes sense. Bulls are aggressive. What is the symbol for stock going down? Does anybody know? They say that's a bear market. Now, to me, that doesn't make any sense because bears aren't necessarily timid. They don't sort of walk away. If you attack them, they attack back. But it kind of makes sense if anyone's been camping in the Sierras or something. If you run into a bear and you kind of clap your hands, usually they're like, eh, and they just walk away. They don't want to make a big deal out of something unless they have to. So you have a bear market, you have a bull market. Obviously, a bull market is better symbol of the American spirit, charging ahead and being aggressive, making money. And with that, we're going to move forward to Wall Street, where this originally was located.